Just in the nick of time.
Man, my mic was muted, so that was fun.
There we go.
Welcome, everyone, to the Cluster Puck Podcast, part of the MHRT Network here at Center Ice. I am Nick. Beside me here, as always, is Brit. How are you, Brit?
Good. It's been a long week. We moved our bedroom from upstairs to downstairs, so we've moved every piece of furniture in our house because then we moved Mac's room to the other room.
Do you have those heavy dressers and drawers and stuff?
Yeah. So it's been a good workout. It's good for the muscles. I only managed to break like 2 toes and a shin, so doing good. How are you?
I helped move my uncle across the county, so everyone's moving apparently. Some just as short as downstairs, others just as far as across the county. So good stuff.
Yeah,
But my wife and I bought they're like these what shoulder dollies, I think is what they officially call them. And you basically take all the weight instead of having to carry it from your hands and it strains your muscles up here and stuff. You basically wear this thing like a shirt, slide it under your furniture, and you just basically pick it up, and all the weight carries on your shoulders and back. Like it's like a heavy backpack. And it made that thing slick. Like it was pretty impressive. So yeah, I would 10 out of 10 recommend those things if you're ever moving. Yep. Anyways, so go ahead and like and subscribe and follow the MHRT network so you can get notified when shows just like the Cluster Puck go live. We have a variety of shows, a lot of new ones that have been on the up and coming. I think Orange and Brew, the BPA Show, mainly Broncos, Sports Nonsense and Whiskey. Those are ones that come to mind. I know there's obviously Wild Wild West, Broncos Breakdown, 5280. I hope I'm not missing anyone. Obviously us. So don't forget to like and subscribe to the MHRT network so you can get that notification. If you want to follow us individually, let me go ahead and throw that ticker up there. You can go ahead and follow us at Clusterpuck Avs on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Okay, so we got a lot of stuff to get into here. So the kind of basis that I want to get to is the Val Nichushkin news, the Greg Cronin hiring, the Stanley Cup final, and then the age-old question of does the best team actually win? So let's get into Val Nichushkin first. So it was reported from the league. This was a press conference that was held with Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, and they both had come out releasing a statement. The question was brought up about what happened with Nichushkin. And, Elliot Friedman reported on this and all that. And they just said that Bill Daly commented and said the organization, the Colorado Avalanche organization, as well as the league, the NHL, are aware of the events, how everything unfolded with that whole Val Nichushkin in Seattle story. And they said it was handled appropriately by both the league and the organization. There's no ongoing investigation, and he'll be eligible to play in the 2023-2024 season. So I guess do with that what you will. They did release police body cam footage.
I mean, it was kind of interesting that was asked during the State of the Union.
Yeah, it's a bit strange that
the only thing intriguing to some of that was like hearing it.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I watched the body cam footage and stuff like that. It's like there's like a 5-minute segment of one, but then there's like the full 20-ish minute released one, and I watched that 20-minute one, and it effectively just tells you the same thing that the reports told you. And, the body cam footage does show the police officer going to the woman in the ambulance, and she's saying, she's looking for her passport. She's accusing someone of being a bad man. But by then, Nichushkin,
but doesn't mean
yeah. So if there was a police investigation, he would have stayed. They wouldn't have just let him go. Or if he had,
I don't know if they got him out of there.
Yeah,
to avoid the media. Like if they wanted him gone before the media got there. The only really intriguing thing that came out of it was the coach doctor. At the very end of one, he says, "Can we discuss something about his like personal health?" And the cop basically says, "I have to shut my camera off because it's recording." and that's like a HIPAA thing. But
yeah,
so it's weird to wonder what they're implying there. You know, where that conversation was going to go. What we wanted to see was probably what immediately followed that. But
yeah.
I mean, I'd imagine at this point most people are assuming it's something to do with drugs and or alcohol. But I mean, there's really all you can do is speculate, and people seem so sure that they know exactly what's going on, and a lot of people really need to zip it
because a lot of those keyboard warriors are basically saying, well, all I know is that it had to do with a heavily intoxicated woman, and Val Nichushkin suddenly left. That's evidence enough for me that he's guilty of this and this and this. It's like, that's not evidence at all. You know, the only thing you know is that she was found heavily intoxicated in his room, if I'm not mistaken, but he left. So that could mean, it could mean he was set up or framed for something. You know, it's like we don't know the exact events. The only thing that we do know is that the league knows exactly what happened. The organization knows exactly what happened. And according to the league, there's no investigation, and it was handled appropriately, and he's back to being eligible to play.
They can say appropriately, but I think it's pretty safe to say that the Avs handled it very poorly by not getting ahead of whatever, was to come of this. The thing is, if he wasn't Russia, there wouldn't be nearly the amount of speculation.
Oh, yeah.
It's just too easy to speculate genuinely the most like end of the world scenario type things, like literally that he picked up the wrong gal and he is now like, sitting with the Flyers goalie somewhere in an igloo serving for the Russian military. And if it wasn't Russia, if they came from, assumptions would be so much more tame. But the Russia aspect, and also, oh man, who was it? I think it was maybe Eric Dean that was talking, saying that he's definitely, and this is a repeating topic, is that he's certainly one of the more reserved people in the locker room. He's not one to offer up any information. Apparently, he won't even. They went through and asked every player, "How did you?"
Yep.
Yeah, he won't say why he picked the number 13. So maybe there's some like, I don't know. Are Russians
Russian
superstitious?
skepticism.
Like, is there something superstitious?
I have no idea.
He had said that like at one point, and I can't remember what the reporter's name was, but he asked if he could ask a question of Nuke, and Nuke just said no and walked away, which it's hard, especially with my type, being like the Minnesota nice, we talk to everyone, we make everyone a neighbor. The even East Coast people, and particularly like Russian types, they can come off as very brash to us Midwestern types. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he is actually a jerk, and English might be a barrier there too, to where, but yeah, apparently they asked if they could ask him a question, and he just said no. So I don't know. He's not chatty.
Yeah. So the only thing we'll ever know is if he comes out with a statement himself, or if he gives permission for the Avalanche to do so. Right. So, it's best we can do, and I say this with a grain of salt, is trust the NHL, trust the league.
Right. And I frankly don't care. Not that I don't care, but I'm not going to judge or hold it against if it is like a drug or alcohol issue. My primary concern is the strength of that locker morale at this point. So I'm curious to see, we'll see how his teammates perceive that and what they know about the situation. It's honestly impressive that they've been able to keep this under wraps. I mean, they can't, no one in the world can keep anything this secret. And they have done a very good job of keeping this tight-lipped.
I know they're able to leak reverse retro jerseys months before they're actually set to release, and yet this is one of the stories that apparently, and just nobody has anything. And that's the thing, is people just, that's where the speculation then really takes off, and people just try to put two and two together. With what evidence there is, you could make kind of the A equals B, but it's never that simple. There's always something more complicated to these things, so hopefully, everything becomes okay. I mean, the two big important people in this story are Val and that lady, and apparently they didn't say she passed away. So as far as I'm aware, they treated her and she's okay. I released from the hospital. He seems to be doing okay wherever he is. He might be back in Russia. He could be back in Denver. Who knows? Hopefully we see him
taking care of his mental, physical health. I mean, he's got a long off season, so hopefully he can come back in the right headspace. It's scary when they've had those injuries, so you don't know where they're at with pain medications. You know, he pushed really hard through a pretty tough injury, so who knows where he's at. But hopefully he comes back mentally and physically sound.
Yeah, and if he decides to, then great. We know exactly how he's able to play, and if with a clear head, he might play even better. You know, you never know. But I don't want to get to that point where it's like he is no longer with the organization all of a sudden. I don't want to go near that door. You know, so best wishes to him. Hopefully everything's going all right. But yeah, as far as we know, he's eligible to play for the season, so that's kind of what we are expecting of him. So we'll just kind of let that lie, and if there's new information that comes out,
might never come out, and that's
true.
Point,
yeah, and honestly, I'd be okay with that, because it'd be just one of those things like, oh yeah, 5 years in advance saying, oh yeah, remember that thing that happened with Nichushkin, and people be like,
especially if he comes
whatever
back
happened,
and plays
but they don't
how we expect.
Exactly. Yep. So we'll just have to see. But yeah, like we said, best wishes to them, and obviously that woman that was also involved in the incident. So, okay, moving on to the next subject here. So it was announced, I believe today, that the Anaheim Ducks are going to be hiring former Colorado Eagles head coach Greg Cronin. He was with the Colorado Eagles for 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, and I think went to the Calder Cup finals 3 of those years. Not finals, I'm sorry, but like far in the Calder Cup playoffs 3 of those years.
Didn't they make the finals last year or the 2022 season?
I won one of them. I could have swore they did.
Because it seemed like the Eagles were on the brink while DU was winning the cup, or whatever they win. Do they win cups in college? Winning the championship.
Like they win scholarships. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, believe it or not, let's see. Well, I might be on the wrong thing, because this one says Chicago Wolves and Springfield Thunderbirds.
Okay. The thing is, and I don't know what the direct situation is, but you have to imagine that the better the Avs are, and when they can manage to pull up a hot prospect from the Eagles, it probably is a direct negative for the Eagles, because we're taking, usually whoever is their best player. So it's such a tough league, which is interesting, because I don't know if you've heard, they did approve for the Chicago Wolves, I believe it was, to separate themselves, to be a completely separate entity. So they won't be funneling any of the players to the NHL, which has the negatives in the profitability, being able to house their draft prospects. But also they don't have to worry about their players being moved up and down. So it's
randomly called up. Yeah.
It isn't. That's an interesting idea.
I can't help but wonder if that's going to be the direction the AHL begins to take, where it kind of turns into, I don't want to call it like a developmental league, because even like basketball's G League and the minor leagues for baseball, they still have those ties.
Yeah.
But it would be something of like the English Premier League soccer, how it's basically 2 different leagues.
Yeah.
The only difference is obviously relegation and promotion. That won't exist. Yeah, but they can basically funnel anywhere, to be determined. But in either sense, he was 5 years with the Eagles, did very well with them. I mean, especially look at this last year with what he did, considering how many people the Avs poached from
You think
Colorado.
Jared Bednar's job is hard? I mean, we're doing the exact same thing. We take their guys, we injure them, we send them back home. It's like
exactly, and then he has to deal with the scraps, and so that got me thinking: do we think this Anaheim Ducks organization, with a Colorado product coach, are we going to see this to be something of like a Jared Bednar type situation, where Bednar went from AHL and just he didn't head coaching NHL experience prior to him going to the Avalanche, and look what happened. Are we going to see something like that?
Had they got what's his face, Bedard, maybe. But I don't think that they're in the same springboard position that the Avs were when Bednar came in, where there was mostly just fine tuning and hole filling and more like locker room regulation. And I think that the Ducks have a lot longer of a way to go. Obviously, I'm super excited for him because that's what you want to, these lower leagues, everything is to get you to the top. And essentially he achieved the ultimate goal. But I just hope that they don't chew him up and spit him out, like with Dallas just getting fired. It's like, what the heck was he supposed to do with that team? Like, you could not blame him for the lack of success. I mean, which it was impressive how bad the Ducks were, but they have such a varying degree of age and youth on that team. It's been discussed that with Cronin, he's just the guy to meld with younger players. There's new communication styles, not just go out there and embarrass them and yell at them. It's a different approach, and he's clearly been successful with that. And honestly, it's a great loss for the Avs because while we have struggled to develop every draft pick, every prospect, we really have seen a lot of success come out of Loveland, particularly when you look at some of our older players that go there and hang out, and then they come up and they're very helpful in the limited roles and the role playing positions that we bring them up for. So it'll be curious to see how that affects our, maybe we'll get somebody better, but that does have an effect on the Avs greatly when you consider they're raising our kids, hopefully to be good people. So yeah, it'll be interesting, but that's great for him. I just hope they don't ruin him.
Exactly. And that would be the worst thing too, because he did exactly what you said. He just did so well with the cards he was given in Loveland with the Eagles organization that, I think, it's awesome for him to get this type of a thing because he kind of comes riding the coattails of Jared Bednar, and that was kind of the reason I brought up that first question. If you follow, is kind of what Bednar did, is because Bednar's first year, I believe, they had literally one of the worst seasons in NHL history, right? But then right after that, they made the playoffs and didn't make it since. It's like, so if that's kind of the product from that same trunk, who knows?
And it's not like they don't have any talent. It's just it's a mismodge-podge group of people that don't really meld together, and maybe they desperately need an identity of style. You've got Zegras. It's like, if you want to go for that blazing wild offensive, they got to pick a style, because I mean, do you see them having an identity? They're kind of in the same situation as the Sharks when it's like, what are you? Like, who are you?
Yeah, it's like they have names and there's faces to those names.
Right.
But they don't have that type of a caliber where it's like, this is your core. Yeah. This is your supporting cast. This is your bench, your depth, excuse me. I feel like as soon as speaking of the Ducks specifically, as soon as they can get that, and hopefully it is under Greg Cronin, because again, he's been a fantastic coach. It then would be kind of twofold, where because of his coaching, now they have an established core with, Zegras and Troy Terry, whoever they have. Yeah, that's right.
The key players here.
That's right. All the key players that the Avs had sitting on their fourth line 3 years ago. But it'll be very interesting to see. But we just want to wish Greg the best of luck, and thank you for everything that you did in Loveland. But a good opportunity for him, and Allie here puts up a great point. It is nice in the NHL that now it's not just somebody in that coaching carousel. It's not like a Daryl Sutter all of a sudden. It's someone new that.
Sorry, talking is hard.
But it's not it's not those who have already been around the block and that kind of stuff that what their coaching style is.
He's old, but it's just a different set of eyes. And it will be interesting to see how a person who had an extended coaching time in the AHL, does that translate to NHL coaching? I think it'll translate well, though, with the Ducks, because they do have a very, very young crew. I mean, he's got talent. He's not going with anything. They need to get a goalie figured out. John Gibson is not going to live forever. He seems to only play
which
well.
I believe he has indicated to the team that he kind of wants out.
That's the guy's just kind of gotten the short end of his whole entire career, it seems like sometimes. But they've got Zegras, they've got McTavish, they've got Troy Terry. I mean, they've got a good. They're really they really need to shore up the defense. I think they just don't play defense, which is kind of one of those things. Like, but we'll just blame Gibson. That's
he's the fall guy.
I think he's going to do well, but I think that it was very wise of them to not bring in a Babcock, a Laviolette, a freaking Trotz to these young guys, because that's how you're seeing guys. When you think about guys like Cole Caulfield, I mean, he just stopped scoring for the year, and then they go and what's his name? St. Louis.
Martin St. Louis.
Bantam coach. They bring in a Bantam coach, and honestly, a lot of NHL coaching is just being a good motivator and like a good,
Well, I mean, and you look at Jared Bednar. Bednar. I have never seen him scream once.
When I heard him say that the first time, I was.
Right? Like, it was like, oh, I didn't even know that was in your vocabulary.
Yeah.
But like, he never screamed or he doesn't yell. Right. He will be stern when like talking to the refs over a bad call or whatever. Like, but
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Exactly. He just keeps that demeanor about him that's very calm, very collected.
They don't want to disappoint
come what may, Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if this Ducks team kind of takes those Colorado Eagle points from Cronin's coaching, and it'll be interesting to see, because it's a new, like Ali said, it's a new dynamic, new type of a coaching system, and it could be the ushering in.
They just I hope they give him time. Is it
they should
3-year contract?
Oh, let me see if they actually did say.
Because I mean, I feel like until he's coached a couple young people that have come completely through him from the beginning of their career through, you just can't judge off like 2 years, especially 1 year. But I really think
I don't see a term anywhere. Oh wait, no term, but the details could come in the next couple of days. So I would say maybe give him at least 3 years,
So it's nice to see him go, but I know that it's a hard loss for Colorado. So it sucks. Yeah. But the point is to make people good enough that they go do better things. That's what I always talk about.
Exactly.
We want to keep them here, but the idea is to send you off to better things. So what can you do?
Yep. So and that's going to open up the new question of like, who fills that new role for the Eagles? Do they just appoint the assistant head coach up, or do they maybe give someone like the assistant coach under Bednar's domain, give him the reins to the Eagles, because then he would use Bednar's schemes and stuff like that to make the Eagles better? That's to be determined. But in either sense, like we said before, we congratulate Greg and wish him all the best in his ventures as the head coach for the Anaheim Ducks organization. Okay, next item. It is the Stanley Cup final between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers. Now we didn't have an episode last week because of Memorial Day, but we've already played game 1 of the finals, and wow, if this is how this finals is going to go, we are in for an amazing treat, and I hope this thing goes to 7. This is going to be just incredible.
Yeah, I hope.
So the question then becomes:
asses and all come out injured and broken for next year.
Yeah, no kidding. We'll see that Tkachuk was playing with a broken collarbone, and Bobrovsky ended up having a third eye grow on his forehead, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So
looking at how he played last week.
I mean, that was Aiden Hill. He had eyes in the back of his head too. That save was incredible.
I know, but the more spectacular the save, the more out of position the goalie was. That's why Vasilevsky
he wasn't even in his crease. The only thing in the crease was his stick.
No, get that rebound, dude. and put it like 2 inches higher to start with. Like, oh, I bet he was just dying after that. But it was they've both been very good games. I was kind of stunned to see the Panthers panic a little bit, especially at the end.
They did play a bit like, just looking at that starting lineup that they showed on the ice for game one, I said, this is a tone-setting line. And my brother and I just looked at each other and said, just first 2 shifts are going to be nothing but hard hits to set the tone. And sure enough. But it did seem like Florida had everything they needed, but it all just kind of fell apart in that third period.
They didn't get any
bad puck luck, bad penalties at the worst kinds of times. Yeah,
I have despised the Tkachuk family as a whole for as long as I've known of their existence, and I don't know what it is, but I have absolutely fallen in love with them. Especially when you watch him play. And you just think, God, this guy is such a jerk and he's just a tool. And then he gets off the ice and he does his little interviews. I don't know if you watched his little NBA thing, but he is so appreciative of his family, of his parents. He spends all his time thanking his teammates. And I just love me a guy that loves his family and plays like an ass. Like, that's what else can you ask for out of a guy? So it was, I don't want to say disappointing because it's not like, I have some kind, but it was just very odd to see him so reckless and irresponsible the last few minutes of that game last night because they were still in it. But they've been perfect for too long, so I suppose they gotta drop the ball occasionally. But I just really don't want Vegas to win. It's not even about wanting the Panthers to win. It's just want Vegas to lose.
See, that's kind of funny because I'm in the boat where. Ultimately, I'm tickled pink with whoever wins because it's a first-time Cup winner. Like it's going to be great. However, I am tending more toward Vegas, not to spite my wife, whose second favorite team is the Panthers, but just because it's been very impressive. Not their front office. This has nothing to do with their front office, nothing to do with the GM,
their ability to manipulate
nothing like that. This is the players and the players only. It's been very fun to see that team go to 2 cups in their 7-year history. So,
if it was anyone else,
but if Florida wins, I'm still just as happy. This is just a very fun matchup, especially how the 2 teams got there. Vegas kind of had an easier road. Florida's was definitely the more noteworthy storybook type.
I just think they deserve it, but we'll see. If Bobrovsky goes down, then the Panthers go down. I mean, the Panthers aren't.
And that's kind of what I think in this particular game. It's going to be a goaltending question because you have Bobrovsky, who has literally carried the teams through every single round, and obviously it helps when you have scores like Tkachuk, Duclair, those types of players.
But there's, like Jeff Merrick says, there's guys that get you there and there's guys that get you through. It's something like that. But like Bobrovsky is, I want to see that redemption for him where people just shut up about his $10 million contract.
I would agree with that.
Does anybody ever whine about, if you guys don't, Bobrovsky gets paid about $10 million a year. And what does Vasilevsky make? 6? Bobrovsky is the reason that no goalie will ever get paid. And Binnington is the reason no goalie will ever get
anything over 7 from now on.
You will see goalies on 3x3s indefinitely.
even if the cap went to $200 million, you'd never see a goalie making more than 7.
So if he can improve it, that's a big step for goalie.
Exactly, and that's kind of where my thing is. It's like if Florida wins this Stanley Cup, in my opinion, Bobrovsky deserves that consignment.
Absolutely.
Like Tkachuk has done wonders for that team.
For sure.
That's not a question.
He's disappeared at times. Bobrovsky.
But that's just it. Bobrovsky, there's 5 skaters on the ice. There's only one goalie, and his main responsibility is to stop 5 other people.
Well, and did you see in that long triple overtime game, he lost 20 pounds.
20 pounds
and he
in
says
one game.
He loses 10 to 15 pounds every single game.
He's not kidding.
It's insane. I can't believe they didn't have him on. They said at one point he played with an IV drip.
That's just nuts. just nuts.
That's not healthy.
So in either sense, like I said, the outcome is going to be very fun. It's disappointing that none of them are the Avalanche. Now let's not get too carried away. But it is fun to see. There's going to be a new time, a first time Cup champion. Vegas always puts on a show with their arena, and I bet you.
Oh my God, I watch it and I'm like, God, I want to love it so bad. It's so cool. The drums, the glasses. I want to know how they're not blind by the time they leave.
I know, and I'm just like a 5-hour drive from Vegas too, so I really could just take a weekend and hop down there. But
well, and that's what. So the game starts at like 7:00, and then puck drops at like 8:42 because they've got a whole
puck. I believe has already dropped.
Oh, is it? It's
we're at
wild.
14 minutes left.
Have you seen their whole pregame get up where they do like a parade with a band and then they do like an actual band concert, but they've got their drummers and stuff, but they do a whole.
And then they have the night on the ice and they have all kinds of stuff.
So
like it is a
cheesy,
spectacle.
But still, you're like, I want my team
It's
to
about
do
the
that.
most Vegas thing they could do to a hockey game.
And you couldn't do it anywhere else. Vegas is the only place that you do it. So I love it, but I hate it. Like it's jealousy. Most what it is, but at least I can admit that.
Yep. And then so back to the question of the goaltenders then is Bobrovsky, who is a brick wall. He is kind of one of their best two players on the team. Switch that to accidentally stumbled his way into playing in the Stanley Cup final, third string Adin Hill. you know?
I think he was a giveaway in a trade, wasn't he? Like he's not supposed to be.
He was just kind of mincemeat in a trade from San Jose, made his way into Vegas, and due to injuries and stuff, he ended up playing through in the season. Then Logan Thompson went out for the season, and he and Brossoit became the tandem. Then during the playoffs, and Quick comes in. Mind you, Jonathan Quick is still at Vegas. That is not playing. He becomes the main mantelpiece for that team, which is so insane to me because of just how stuff landed right in his lap. And in my opinion, I think he's risen to that occasion. He has been very good. Now, he's no Stonewall Jackson to, what Bobrovsky is.
Right. And will this last forever? Probably not, but you don't need it to last forever. You need it to last about 2 more weeks. You
need to last, at least for them, 3 more wins, Yeah. But the thing with Adin Hill is even though he is I don't want to call him lesser of a goalie, but just Bobrovsky he's on an elite tier. He's in his zone.
Proven.
Yeah. Vegas has that team in front of them that
shot blocking jerks,
always in the way of the lane type players, which make Adin Hill's job just that more easy. Not to mention the fact that those pipes, I swear, in Adin Hill's crease are about
my God. One of them hit it so loud that you could hear it like somebody whacked the camera on the bar, and it was like how hard. It was
amazing.
That's it's an incredible thing as a goalie. I feel like it sounds dramatic, but you genuinely learn by the pitch of the puck whether it went in or not. Like you learn if it's
Yep. Because if it's a short tink, it went in. If it's a long ping, it didn't go in.
It's really interesting. I realized that a while back, and I thought it was pretty funny. But he could come out next year and just be a regular backup again. But I mean, and this is kind of our topic coming up about, does the best team win? Usually a lot of it rides on the goaltending. A lot of it rides on the goaltending.
And let's go ahead and dive into that then. If I had a little segue, I would. It would be really
I mean, I think because it's put these two teams in the position, which of these two teams would you consider the best?
Well, and so that is the question. Everyone talks about the best team, right? You need how do you see the best team? Because there's two, in my opinion, there's 2 ways to look at it. There's on paper and there's on the ice.
Yep. So you got the league standing versus the sexy.
Exactly. Right. So like, for example, by the strictest definition, if you're kind of an elitist in that type of group, it should have been Vegas and Boston in the final,
right? And Boston should have been given
the best team,
Stanley Cup, and just give them the gold medals for next year's Olympics too.
Exactly. Like Boston
The most successful regular season team in all of history.
In the history of the sport.
But
And
what is the very first make or break of a Stanley Cup team? The very first thing that can break you is your goaltending. And that's a lot of what broke them. So I think that's the first thing that you have to conquer as to whether, if they're the best and their goaltending is serviceable, then I think you move on to the next layer of issues.
Yep. And keep in mind, everyone, for those that are listening, we're talking about in tournament style play, not like, for example, making your way through the league, because in that sense, it sifts itself out. I can see how the best team becomes number one. Like, that's not a question.
Right. But as far as when you're putting 1 versus 8 in a long sample of a season,
when it's a series, best series, or even single game elimination, whatever it is, in my opinion, the best team always wins. Now, when I say best team, it's whoever scored more goals than the other. That to me is the better team. Now, there should have been, for example, let's say you pin up the Tampa Bay Lightning versus like the Columbus Blue Jackets. Yeah, the stats would say Tampa should win 90% of the time. Yeah. Right. But that's a numbers thing. Yeah. That's not what happens out on the ice. Right. So what happens out on the ice is that the better team won the game.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my look to it, Britt. I don't know if
the better team is an ever evolving.
It's a 50-50. The numbers can tell you all they want, but it's especially obvious in the game of hockey, it is a 50-50 chance for someone to win a game.
I think that we so the way I kind of see it is you come into the beginning of the playoffs, and I think that on paper gives you a good way to assess, because we know that Boston did good. We know that they were good. And you and I, we do a hockey podcast. So obviously we're a little more in tune than a lot of like average fans, or just, I don't like the term like fair weather fan, because I gladly welcome anybody that wants to root for the people that I love. But most people aren't paying attention, especially outside of our division, in our, so it's a good way to look and just establish like, this is who is expected to win. This is who has performed up to this point. But I feel like the playoffs changes immediately. I feel like if you pay attention deeply, you can change who you consider the best before the game is played, when you consider playoff style being such a brutal hit on some teams. I just don't think that on paper has a whole lot to do with anything other than gauging what you might be looking at. But I think that
as far as standing,
I think it changes. Yeah, exactly. I usually after the first, I think you can determine a new best and who deserves it. But I think the first thing that you look at is the goaltenders and how they finished out the season. And I think that you can definitely make a different opinion of who the best is right there. Because Ullmark, really wasn't doing that great. They kind of had a little bit of a skid, but so did the Avs last year going into the playoffs. So I think once you get past the goalies, then you just have a lot of other factors that go into it. And a lot of it, I don't think is talent at all. It takes stars aligning and luck that you cannot control. So I think you have to look at the controllable things. And then I think you look at the mentality of the team, and then it comes down to the stuff on the paper. There's just teams that aren't driven to win. And then there's teams that just get really shitty luck. And that's, I think there's a little bit of both for the Avs this year. I don't think we had the same drive as last year. We were missing elements, and we had a lot of really bad luck. And that's what I think that Dallas, I think that they had quite a bit of bad luck too. And Vegas has had so much luck. And while the Panthers have, what they've done is incredible, they've also just gotten really lucky on a lot of stuff. And that's, it all shakes even eventually, supposedly, but it's, it just is what it is. I really believe that it's a lot of luck, but I think that I'm with you that the best is irrelevant to season standings, especially when you consider the Maple Leafs. That's the point. It's irrelevant. But it's ever changing through the playoffs, and it always will be. Nobody has come in and swept the entire playoffs.
Yep, that's right. And you bring up a good point, because if we really were talking about the best, as far as if you could predict every single time, who the winner would be and what the score would be, blah 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 blah, you would know or I should say the factors that would never exist would be injuries, personal reasons,
one of your
on
teammates
ice
just, like,
incidences.
disappearing. Yeah.
Yeah, just those things that
Suspension.
you cannot predict, right? If
Who
you
would have
took
thought
out
that we would lose Cale Makar to a suspension? Cale Makar.
exactly,
like,
right? So it's
Glenn,
like it's all those things that you don't account for. Now, if those don't exist and everything was happy and great and injuries never existed, yeah, then that gives the paper a little bit more of a reason to be
essentially
the
there is
best.
a correlation eventually between the luck and the uncontrollables to paper, because you make your own luck, something in between there. Luck.
Exactly. And that's just is like there's this other thing called drive, right? Which team wanted it more, so that's another thing to take into consideration. So
but you have to execute it correctly, and that doesn't come in the form of penalties.
And exactly. So it's one of those things you just simply cannot say. Now there's some things where you can safely assume, but most of the time, at least in the sport of hockey, you can't always guarantee the on paper better team is going to win. Now if it's something like basketball, you can kind of
Nuggets.
That one. Little shout out to them. But basketball is kind of more polarizing, where it's like if it's later in the regular season or something and you have like the worst team playing the best team, it's going to be like a 40-point blowout, and that's kind of seen, but at the same time you don't know. So at least in the game of hockey
with basketball the other night, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like 90% of the teams that were like the number 1 seed playing the number 8 seed had won. I think it was 90%. It was a shocking number. Had ended up going and winning the championship. So I'd say that basketball is a lot more predictable in that, because essentially the Nuggets have to win, and if they don't, then they're entering a very obscure percentage of teams that haven't.
A very minority percentage. Absolutely.
And then with hockey, it's like the opposite. I don't know if I sent you that thing earlier, but of the last 36 teams that won the President's Trophy, so the best regular season team, the best team, since the 36 teams that have won it since it was introduced in 85, only 8 of them went on to win the Stanley Cup. So like that's
that same year.
That means only 8 of the best teams.
Wow.
Like the best of since we started recording have won the Stanley Cup. So it's like,
so who are they really the best?
The best teams aren't the best, or it just shows you the parity in the NHL and how beautiful and how seriously disgusting it is sometimes too, because when you consider it, like, it is astounding that Boston is done, and it all can just come down to such small factors, which a goaltender playing out of their mind isn't a small factor, but when you consider it's like one person on the ice out of all of these other factors, and look at Dallas. I mean, that was a very unlucky time for Mr. Ottinger to forget how to play hockey or get whatever, we're always hurt when we lose and we're feeling good when we win. So I don't know, but it's
very true.
So yeah, the last one was the Hawks when they won in 2013. They had won the President's Trophy, which they were like, I mean, that's an unprecedented team of winners. So it's hard to even count that. But yeah, it's incredible to me. And especially when you consider there were even less teams, several years ago. So it wasn't like there was so much more competition, and I don't know. I just thought that's crazy. So the NBA and the NHL are totally opposite in that aspect, even though they operate a lot the same. So it's just weird. Hockey is it's a weird.
It's one of those teams or one of those games where, you're skating on a sheet of ice, handling a chunk of rubber that could break your face.
Yeah.
And you're trying to shoot it in a 6x4 net with some guy in front of you. Yeah, that kind of evens the playing field a little bit.
And the thing is, there's no absolute control of anything on the ice, because you throw a basketball, where it's going. But the thing is,
you have complete pass possession.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a puck hit like a dip in the ice or hit the boards and bounce the opposite directions?
Take an odd bounce.
Yeah, it's and it keeps it interesting. And maybe that's why I like hockey more than all the other ones. But, and I agree. I grabbed Allie's comment because like it is, people are acting like the Panthers came from like out of nowhere. Like this is so surprising, but they had a killer year last year. And they absolutely dropped the ball, and they went into the playoffs with Burnett was their coach for the playoffs last year, wasn't he? And he had been a assistant coach up until then. So I mean, it's a pretty gnarly year. Didn't they started with Joe Quenneville, right? I always confuse whether that was or was that Nashville?
No, that was Florida.
Yeah, so they started with Quenneville, a very, very well-respected, very good coach as far as hockey goes. Life, not as much, but hockey. And they had him just ripped out from under them literally within a day. I mean, I think they let him coach that last game and he was gone. And I would imagine they cut off contact. That probably was not a clean cut. Well, or too clean. Sure. But then they went in with Burnett. So that I feel like if there was a time for a coach to matter, it's definitely in the playoff time. Sure. So they're definitely they're underdogs for sure. But they're not as much as a lot of people are acting like they are.
Yeah. And going back to that whole best team theory, look at who is in that final. The last team
barely squeaked
into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yep. So and they have beaten out the competition. Boston, best ever team to hit an ice sheet in history. Toronto, I mean, they made it to the second round. Yay, cool. And they sweep the Carolina Hurricanes, who were making a statement of their own.
And I feel like it's every year. I mean, they left Rod Brind'Amour in an absolute mind swirl. He was just baffled. He just didn't even know what to say. All he wanted to do was
what he said after that game 4 loss.
You'll look back and we got swept, but you know what? We didn't get swept. It's like,
I watched that whole series. We didn't get swept. My brother and I are laughing about
you
that
understand what he's saying,
which
it's not,
I get where he's coming from. It's like it didn't feel
and that's like how it was against the Oilers last year. Like it didn't feel like we ran through them. But we did. But it just
did. Yeah.
And Ron
but at the same time,
he's a well-spoken man. He's a man. He's an intense person. He's got a lot to say about hockey and about teams and about his players. And he's got a lot of ideas. And he just sat up there like, I don't know what to freaking do. I literally don't know what to do is essentially what he said.
He's like, I've done all I can.
We played awesome. My goalie played good. My players played good. And Freddie Anderson's like, I finally don't suck and we still can't do it. Like a habitual mid. I mean, they've gotten out in the second or third round.
It's the Rod Brind'Amour curse. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But like I said, my brother and I were just having giggling fits over because, like I said, his intent. We understand what he was trying to say, but just the way he said it was the funniest thing. Where he just, he just says, "I watched that series." And we didn't get swept, and it's like, dude,
the vein bulging in his forehead. And especially that matchup was so tough because and you listen to the same podcast that I do, but Rod Brind'Amour played for Paul Maurice, and Paul Maurice essentially ended his career on a pretty yucky, it wasn't
sour,
it wasn't a lovely departing. And so that was really personal for those guys. And I love Rod Brind'Amour, so I really wanted that for him. I really didn't want to see Carolina win. They just don't really do anything for me this year. But I don't know. I would have liked to see him get a little more success, especially when you watch up there and he's just like, we played really good. Like, I don't know. I don't really know. We didn't get swept.
Yeah, and it was a great series. I mean, all credit to Carolina. They played fantastic, but that's just kind of how the better team won the game, or in this case, the series. So, anyway, my lights have turned off on me. They're like, we're done here. Okay. So, okay. Well, I don't think I have any other worthy. Here we go.
No, I don't think so. I was going to ask. I don't know if you saw. Did you see that the CHL has switched up all of their penalty rules? So the serving of penalties, and I can't remember what they all are. Chris was actually talking about Chris Maselli. He's like my favorite. I love Locked On. If anybody's ever looking for more Avs podcasts, Locked On is great. I love Chris and Shaggy, but You'll have to look it up. I should have written it down, but it vaguely crossed my mind. So essentially, with the new penalty rule, if you go in the box and the other team scores, you stay in the box for the full 2 minutes.
Ooh.
Yes, and then if the other team scores on a delayed penalty, you still have to serve the penalty.
Still have to serve the penalty. I like that as well. What about
because it's like and then what was the last one?
Anything shorthanded related? I don't think anything would change there, right?
Oh, one of them, which I thought was kind of random, that if you score shorthanded, then your penalty is done, which I thought was peculiar, but I suppose that invites you to busting your ass while you're shorthanded to try to score.
Yeah, that
take more risk.
Could provide incentive. I'm not opposed to that.
Man, what was it? Can't remember. I'll have to look it up and I'll post it up because it was really interesting. But I like seeing, and that's what it like the CHL, the AHL, like that's where we should be doing this stuff. My son. So I play adult hockey. So like we have our own, usually it's like 2-line icing. Like we're old and we don't want to have to skate as much. And, but so I'm coaching his Solar Bears team and we were in Minneapolis for a tournament like 2 weeks ago. And this is their first time playing on full ice and they iced it. And what was it? Oh, they had a penalty. Mites. They're getting penalties, like going in the penalty box. And with USA Hockey, you can't ice it on the penalty anymore, which I was like, holy crap, especially for...
That would ruin a lot of people's penalty killing.
Very, very interesting. And that's what I was thinking is, because I'm a huge supporter in getting rid of offsides, huge. Like, I'd love to see what the minds could come up with as far as how gameplay would change. Strategies, it would be so incredible. But
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, so I just haven't played USA Hockey in so long because adults were not registered USA Hockey, and my kid's been playing half, mites and stuff. But now I wanted to do some research and see like what people have thought of that because that's a really good incentive to not get a penalty. Because could you imagine watching the NHL not being able to ice it?
That would be insanity.
Yeah,
pure insanity.
I don't know how, and I guess it's been a couple of years like that. So I'm curious to see if they've addressed that they feel it's successful. But it's a great incentive to not get penalties, I think. So yeah, that was random, but I kept wanting to bring that up.
No, you're good.
Stuff, especially not like they're guinea pigs, but I kind of like the idea of doing it in the AHL, the CHL, where
just test it, see what happens.
Right. And they can test it at a higher level, so you can see a better correlation than if it works for the mites, might not work for the NHL. But I'm curious, so I don't know. That's my last little tidbit.
Very good. And honestly, we might do some Hockey 101, teach people basic rules of hockey on the podcast. That would be kind of fun, but to be determined. So, all right, so as the time of recording this, Alec Martinez just scored to make it 2-0 for the Golden Knights. I do think it would be kind of poetic if he won their game 4 in overtime. And
if they're gonna do it, I want all of their little like dweeby misfit guys to actually do it. Like the Eichel redemption story is like cool, kind of, but I just look at his face and I honestly just want to slap him. I just don't like him. I don't, and that'll probably change because I've gone from absolutely hating Brad Marchand to I love him now. I just have fallen in love with him and Kachuk. So if maybe someday I'll love Eichel, but I don't feel that one coming. But I like it for Martinez, who's their P guy, Pacioretty. I always get Petrangelo and Pacioretty.
There's Petrangelo and White Cloud and
I like
McNabb and
it'd be nice to see those guys do some stuff. It always hurts my feelings to think about the guys that get released in expansion drafts. So I always want good things for them. It's like, I know. When I thought about we just gave away Donskoy and it was like, sorry, Donkey. And then he just goes and has a injury.
Jonah Donsoki.
Yeah.
I believe is what they announced. So, all righty. Well, that concludes the episode then. And like I said, at the time of this recording, Golden Knights are up 2-0.
Could we have a winner by next week?
We could. If the Golden Knights sweep, we could have a winner by next week.
I don't think that will. I think somebody will win.
Yeah, for my wife's sake, this thing needs to swap fast.
Yeah, and that just proves how close it really was between 1 and 8. So that the best is not that much worse or much better than the worst. Like,
that's exactly right. Okay, everyone. So thank you once again for watching this episode of the Cluster Puck Podcast. Once again, you can follow the MHRT network so you can get notified when shows just like us go live. We have shows throughout the week. Us on the Cluster Puck, we are typically Mondays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. If you want to follow the MHRT network to get that notification, we implore you to do so. We would really love your following and support. If you want to follow us specifically, just follow us at the Cluster Puck Avs on Twitter and Instagram, the Cluster Puck Podcast on Facebook. I'm getting really we need this.
You're very close there. You're really
think, man. This name makes me think. So once again, everyone, thank you for watching. We'll see if we have a Stanley Cup winner by next week. And as always, go Avs, go.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yeah, go, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every